For most, catching the bus or the train is a simple task, and the biggest problem they may think about is it arriving late. This sadly is not the case for everyone, as people with disabilities have to face many more obstacles. Whether it's a bus without a ramp, or in extreme cases, a frosty welcome from a busy bus full of people, or having to wait for a number of buses before they can board. Those who are deaf or blind have arguably an even bigger challenge: how to communicate with the driver. With around 95,100 people with disabilities living in Wales and around 14,000 of which living in Newport, it seems critical that we can make it easy for everyone to use public transport. I was in Newport and asked whether you thought there was enough provision for disabled people on our city's public transport routes.
It's just replacing the old fleet with the new one because the double deckers and stuff are just not disabled friendly at all.
It's good to have portable ramps that attach to the trains.
Yeah.
Good to have some kind of ramp to go with them.
Yes, they should make a lot of the premises where they've got to have a ramp for exit.
In the past, there have been a number of cases where people have not been able to board buses because there is no ramp or because the wheelchair spaces are full. When I spoke to Sally Mitchell from Able Radio, she told me what happened when she experienced this.
The bus pulled up and it was full of buggies with obviously the mums were there with their babies. There wasn't any room for me, and the driver said, sorry, you'll have to wait for the next one. But it was about 20 minutes later, the next bus, and I knew I needed to get on the bus for the appointment. So I'm quite confident, and I said to the bus driver, no, I can't, I need to get on the bus, I've got an appointment. Please, could you ask them to fold up their buggies, because after all, that is my space. Anyway, he asked them if they'd fold up their buggies, and they refused point blank to do it. I was left on the bus stop getting really cross, and the bus went on, and I had to wait for the next one. Thankfully, there was a space on the next one, but it did cross my mind, how many times will I have to wait for this bus to go past until I find one that's empty?
So, what are transport providers doing to change this? Shouldn't it be easy for everyone to use public transport? Noel Davies, Marketing and PR Executive for Newport Transport, said that Newport Transport are very committed as an organisation to catering to the needs of disabled passengers and have already made changes to make it easier for disabled users of the service.
Often what you find buses in general is that the space allocated for disabled passengers, i.e. those in a wheelchair, can often get taken up by other people put their bags or their buggies in the way, and then that makes it very difficult for the disabled passengers in a wheelchair to obviously go in the space that's clearly allocated for them. What we've done with our buses is make sure that those spaces that are allocated for the needs of disabled passengers in wheelchairs are not just clearly marked, but used only for them and them alone.
Michael Vaughan is the head of franchise and stakeholder management at Arriva Wales, who runs several train services throughout Newport. He says customers want more information than anything else, and his company are rising to that challenge.
That customer information is the most important thing for them. So in terms of providing information, we're trying to install some 56 additional customer information systems, which are the LED type systems, so that people with visual impairments can see them properly, and also at some point to try and put an automated announcing system. Now, we have many of our stations are unstaffed, so we see customer information as very important, and we already have a program to put additional customer information systems up.
I also spoke to Sally about what she thought of the trains.
Trains are appalling for people who happen to be a wheelchair user, and there's been many occasions where I've gone in the guards wagon because that's the only place to go. I very rarely do trains for that reason. Buses are infinitely better.
Michael Vaughan also told me about a guidebook provided by Arriva Wales to help guide disabled users.
This guide is usually at stations, and we can mail it out if people wish to contact us. Everything anybody wishes to know in terms of information and how to travel on our services is included in this guide.
One common problem that some of you spoke about was that people who worked on the buses or trains should know more about how to help disabled people when travelling. With that in mind, I asked Noel Davies from Newport Transport if there was any training provided for their employees.
Our drivers go through a very, very strict training regime, and it's all built around the customer. When they're training to be a bus driver, it's not just about obviously driving the vehicle. We understand that they have to cater to the passengers' needs, and that includes disabled customers. They will go through elements which are specifically aimed at how to cater for passengers, particularly those with disabilities.
Another problem faced by disabled people when using public transport, specifically those in a wheelchair, would be prams or buggies taking up the wheelchair space. So I asked Richard Davies, the commercial director for Stagecoach, if there are any procedures put in place to make sure there should always be a space for a wheelchair user on a bus. In this case, if there are a buggy and a pushchair in the wheelchair space.
Advice that we give our drivers is that politely have to ask the people with the buggies that they need to take their children out of the buggy and fold them to make the space available for a wheelchair user. We generally suggest that they do that before the wheelchair person has boarded the bus, so as to reduce any potential conflict.
So what happens if the facilities for disabled people are not good enough? Well, Richard Davies, Michael Vaughan and Noel Davies all said that they'd like to hear from anyone if they've had problems when using their services, that they can feel free to get in touch and let them know, and that they welcome any suggestions that may help improve the quality of their services. There does seem to have been changes that make it easier for disabled people to use public transport. Everyone I've been speaking to in Newport City Centre said that we are still some way away from making public transport easy for all though. So what's being done to continue to improve things? Michael Vaughan says that they're hoping to bring in an automated announcing system, which would also help those who are blind. Richard Davies said Stagecoach would be making it easier for disabled users in the future too.
And we know a number of the local authorities are looking to increase the number of bus borders or raised curbs to enable the people to get on without use of the needed for the ramp. So that should ease access to and from the vehicle.
Sally Mitchell says although progress has been made, transport companies still need to improve. Disabled access legislation brought in by the government in the past 10 years has meant small changes for businesses but big improvements for those who use their services. The companies say they are committed to better access, but campaigners say public transport is still on its journey to suitable levels of access and that there is still plenty of room for improvement.